Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is that you're tuning in, thank you for stopping by. This is the Martal Group Fireside Chats, where each week we sit down with an industry expert and get their unique perspective on the world through the lens that we all know as sales and marketing. At the intersection of finance, marketing, and digital sales, you'll find today's guest, Christian. He's the Director of Marketing and Digital Sales at 𝐔𝐘𝐒 with a wealth of knowledge, no pun intended, that we dive into today. Have a listen.
The peak of Lego's crisis began with the millennium. So during 2003 and 2004, Lego recorded annual losses of around $400 million.
Wow.
Looking beyond selling toys, they sought to diversify their business model by expanding their business with digital offerings. Lego invested both in its own video games and well as in a licensing partnership with well-known brands, and this is also very interesting. They took a budget of $60 million for the first Lego film, and they earned a total of $470 million.
Wow.
And with that, the company returned to its former strength.
Now sit back, relax, and let's dive right into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Martal Group Fireside Chat podcast. Wherever you are listening, whatever platform you are listening on, I am so happy that you are back here and listening and tuning in once again. Today we are going international, and I am super excited to chat with today's guest, dive back into both the marketing and the sales realm. And like I said before, we're going to go international on this one. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it. I'd like to welcome Christian to the podcast. Christian is the Director of Marketing and Digital Sales at 𝐔𝐘𝐒. And we're going to learn a little bit about Christian. We're going to learn a little bit about 𝐔𝐘𝐒 and dive into a number of different things as we go along here. But first things first, Christian, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, hello, Chris. It's very great to be here, and thanks for the invitation. Hello, everybody.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before we dive into questions, before we start really kind of pulling apart the onion, so to speak here, Christian, I would love if you would give just a little introduction to yourself here. Tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about 𝐔𝐘𝐒, so that we get a kind of a chance to hear from who we're going to be listening to today.
Yeah, let me explain. So somehow my path was mapped out because my father and both working in the bank. So my father as a CEO, one brother in the property department, and the other as a financial advisor. So I also trained as a banker. I guess I had no other choice. So I stayed in banking for roughly 10 years, but only very briefly as an advisor, because at the age of 23, I became a head of marketing, and later I was also responsible for the sales of our apartments, such as the insurance companies and building societies. But I always knew that banking wasn't the only thing I wanted to do in my professional life. So I studied economics at the same time as my time at the bank. After that, I went on to study PR management at the University of Münster. And the goal was I wanted to be well prepared for my time in the private sector. And that's how it turned out now. So my career at 𝐔𝐘𝐒 began in 2000. First as a marketing manager, then head of marketing, and finally now for marketing and digital sales. And let me say, it was an exciting journey, because the exciting thing is that in the end it was a lucky coincidence, because with the growth and the increasing internationalization of 𝐔𝐘𝐒, I've been able to learn more year after year, and I think that's not so normal. And today we are on a high professional level, and I'm very grateful for that. I'm not sure whether this would have been possible in an extremely large group or in a company that was already at the end of its development. So this is my path. The time was going so fast when I think about it now, maybe close to 20 years
Wow.
at 𝐔𝐘𝐒. So this is really exciting. I think this is not normal today that someone stays so long in a company, but I'm proud of it to be part of the path of 𝐔𝐘𝐒. Yeah.
I like it. No, that's super exciting that you've kind of had this journey, and I like how you started where it's kind of been mapped out for you and planned out for you. So kind of like, I guess at its foundation, the foundation layer that you have is kind of in like finance and banking and all that other sort of stuff. That's the core story.
As you heard, I had no other choice.
Kind of being a part of that whole family.
I don't want to be an outlaw.
Hey, I understand how that is. Yeah. So you kind of started with your journey in finance and banking and things of that nature, and then it kind of took you into what was the attraction to the marketing side? Where did that come into play? That's kind of what I'm curious about here. Like, where do you think I'm in banking and I'm in finance now, but I kind of want to go and do marketing and sales? What's that connection?
I always had a creative side, and it was not so easy to use this creative side in banking, in the marketing of a bank. So this was one of the main reasons why I decided to go in the private sector, because there I thought I could have use this creative side more and more from year to year. And this is, and I will later talk about that, because I think it's always good marketing is always a mixture between using processes, automated processes, but also creativity. But I will explain something about later. About this connection between these two sides.
So out of curiosity, then, being able to use your creative side in marketing and things of that nature, is there an aspect of marketing that you enjoy the most? Like, what's your favorite part about the marketing piece that you're involved in, whether that's with 𝐔𝐘𝐒 or just in general?
The big goal is that you connect the creative side with this at the end with the CRM side.
Okay.
I will explain that later, because if you look at LinkedIn today, everybody is the greatest, everybody is the best. So this means if you say and I think and when everybody says that, it's not really trustable. That's what I mean. So, and then you have to be creative and to get out of the big pool of superstars. So you have to do some other things which are more emotional. But and this is I don't want it to be creative because I want to be creative. There has to be a sense behind it, that you can also scale this creativity and connect it with with a mass affluent approach, so that you widen the funnel on the one hand, and on the other hand you can also use the creativity to be individual. So this is for me an important mixture.
I like that.
And when I started at 𝐔𝐘𝐒, this was, as I said before, in 2006. 𝐔𝐘𝐒 was 7 years old, and now this year we are again 25 years. So it is a huge, a big birthday for 𝐔𝐘𝐒 this year, 25 years. And maybe I can explain something about the start of 𝐔𝐘𝐒. If it's okay for you, then I can give you an overview where we started.
I was going to ask, because 𝐔𝐘𝐒, you've been with this company, I think you said going on about 20 years or so, which is very commendable. And you're right, you don't see a whole lot of people nowadays sticking it out with companies for that long. So you've seen probably a very wide growth stage of this organization, the highs, the lows, everything in between. Can you break that down for us? Tell us the journey of 𝐔𝐘𝐒.
Absolutely. So what I can tell you is that 𝐔𝐘𝐒 was founded in '99, and it was called with this stock market coach product, and the claim was in former times, we make investors. So what we did at that time, the aim was to familiarize many still uninformed investors with the concept of the stock market and investing. So there were a lot of people who had no knowledge about investing and the stock market. And that was our first product, this stock market product. And now I do a big step, because from year to year, we're getting more closer to advisory software and all these things. So because in the millennium years, there were some problems with the stock exchange and all these things. Many things changed. Some of the investors lost the trust in the stock exchange, and so we also had to change our business model. And so there we started to developing software for advisory in wealth management. And today we stand for the democratization of wealth management services. That means that wealth management should be available for all, and we do this via APIs, and these things were originally developed, and this is what describes the long journey from 𝐔𝐘𝐒 for world-class private banks. So that means for a small group of banks. And what we did, we managed to transform our business model for world-class wealth management firms to make these services available for all, for small fintechs, for family offices, large organizations, also for core banking provider or CRM provider. So, and today we transformed market approach is to make sure that these consumers can compose a use case that consume it when and where it is needed. So today we are delivering services via APIs. So that means microservices. We call it the 𝐔𝐘𝐒 blocks. To banks, for example, like LGT, Raiffeisen, the biggest German bank, Commerzbank, large core banking providers, and as I said before. And this is where is 𝐔𝐘𝐒 at the moment. And how does this happen? This happens due to our two composable blocks, APIs wealth management platform. So one platform capable to compose multiple use cases by assembling blocks and orchestrating via flexible BPMs to exactly match the journey the consumer is accepting. And this applies to the areas of financial planning, advisory, portfolio management, portfolio analysis, portfolio reporting, and portfolio monitoring and analysis. So this is a bit of the long journey of 𝐔𝐘𝐒, and it's a bit similar to my story. We learned every year. So you can see, and we always had to rethink our business model. I think 5 or 6 years ago, we had in the market, there were most of them monolithic solutions. That means no flexible solutions. And then at the right time, we decided to go and to build a flexible and composable platform. And and the market is changing day by day. And what we recognize is that there's a really great ask for easy and flexible connecting APIs and wealth management services. Yeah.
So that's quite the journey then of the organization in general. And I like what you said about being able to learn day by day. Now, I am by no means a financial expert. I will leave that in your lap, but I would imagine that the world of finance has been accelerating pretty rapidly over the last, let's just say 10 years or so. So you guys have probably had to change a pretty fair amount, or at least get your arms around a pretty fair amount of that change to try and stay ahead. Is that right?
Absolutely right. Because what we recognize in the long story of 𝐔𝐘𝐒, we have long sales cycles. That means it needs a long time to convince financial service providers that they want to use, or that they should use new technology, because they have monolithic systems, and in the past it was very expensive to add new systems or maybe to completely renew their existing systems. So, and there's a lot of fear in the market, and that is what we want to avoid, because we tell them, guys, it's easy to add our flexible composable APIs to your existing system. That means you don't have to renew your whole system, and you don't have to invest 5 or 6 million or something like that. And this is because they also want to be sure that there is a value, value for their investment, what they do in software, because there's often a big risk connected with the guy who decides that in the bank. So if he decides, okay, we invest 2 or 3 million in, and then he has to be ensured that the software works and that it's connected to the old system. So this is because this is not so easy. This is the reason, because it's not so easy to convince banks to try new things, new technologies. Yeah.
So with a lot of that change that you're seeing, are there trends associated with that? Are you seeing certain trends that are kind of like popping out to you guys? Like how does that work within your world?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you're not so close to you said you're not so close to the financial industry, but maybe you heard about the Great Wealth Transfer, and this means this is a very, very big deal, which is still running at the moment. But I give you an example with the aging out of the baby boomers. The wealth millennials are coming closer, a population group that makes more than 27% of the population, and Beside the steady build of wealth, gifts or inheritances occasionally release considerable assets in a single stroke, which have to be managed properly. And so we are talking about roughly $84 trillion in total wealth is expected to transfer by 2045.
Wow.
So this is a massive upheaval in the wealth management industry and has been well known in the recent years. And the forthcoming change has been frequently pointed out. The reactions to it have been somewhat sluggish so far. And what you can see is that a huge wave of efforts is coming towards a new target group, and they have a completely different expectation of a bank's level of digitization. So the banks have to follow suit. But maybe what I like is that I do a comparison to different branches. I think then it's easier to understand, because some of well-known famous companies also in other branches failed because they not did the change to the digital world at the right time. So maybe I can give you, about the toy manufacturer Lego? Did you with the bricks, with the small bricks? Yeah. So, and I like this as an example because it's very close to our blocks, which we call our different APIs. And what I can, and maybe it needs 2 minutes to explain what is the background of this. So the toy manufacturer Lego is another successful case for digital transformation. They were founded in 1932 in Denmark, and they became the predominant player in the market. So especially from 1970 to 1991, marked a flourishing period when almost every child owned the colorful bricks. I think they are different colors. Maybe you can remember. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
However, as time passed by and digitization went ahead, the demand gradually decreased in the beginning of the 90s. The peak of Lego's crisis began with the millennium. So during 2003 and 2004, Lego recorded annual losses of around $400 million.
Wow.
So yeah, absolutely. So there was a completely change to the success they had before. And then what company initiated a digital transformation during this economic crisis and adapted to the market. So looking beyond selling toys, they sought to diversify their business model by expanding their business with digital offerings. Lego invested both in its own video games and well as in a licensing partnership with well-known brands. And this is also very interesting. If you have the right brands where you can connect with, this is much easier to do this digitization. So they took a budget of $60 million for the first Lego film, and they earned a total of $470 million.
Wow.
And with that, the company returned to its former strength. So one of the latest products offer endless playful possibilities. Lego established, for example, building block construction that can be created in their web interface. So you can see this is very close to the 𝐷𝐿𝐼 blocks.
Yeah.
What I explained at the beginning. And instead of fading into oblivion, Lego successfully managed to adapt the changing conditions and continue to appeal to children. So still today, children are growing up with Lego. In 2021, the Lego Group generated global sales of about 55 billion Danish krones. That means 7.4 billion euros. So which it makes for the largest toy manufacturer in the world. And maybe one or two last sentence. What can we learn from the story of Lego? This means the games manufacturer was on the brink of bankruptcy, but managed the transformation from the analog to the digital work brick by brick without losing its identity. And what they did were profound diagnosis, the willingness to reorganization and diversity, and particularly the use of the right technology are mandatory to emerge from challenging periods as a thriving, forward-looking company. So it should be emphasized that Lego partnered with the well-known tech companies to innovate its product portfolio. So that means they did not everything by their own. They chose the right partner. And this is also a particularly relevant recipe for success in the financial industry, given the recent popularity of embedded wealth management and cross-platform solutions. So I think this is a very interesting comparison to what happens now in the financial industry.
I always like hearing like the stories about Legos, because everything that you told, first off, Lego was a huge part of my childhood. I have Legos up on my shelf behind me. Like there are Legos in my office all around me. So like, yes, I'm a 33-year-old man playing with Legos. I'm not ashamed to admit it, right? But it's really interesting that you mentioned the digital transformation of what they did when they started making video games, because I was just talking to a friend about the original video game they made back in the day. It was one of my favorite as a kid. And it's when you think about it, not from a kid's perspective, right? When you think about it as a kid, you're like, cool, Lego's making video games. But when you think about it as you and I are, right, you know, there are actual learnings and teachings from this, you know, to say, hey, we are able to kind of still transform what we do by reframing our product or reframing how we're thinking about it. And technology has a huge part to play in that. So it's probably right to assume that as technology develops and grows, it's been a pretty big cornerstone to what, you know, 𝐂𝐒 has been able to do within, you know, your space over the past couple of years. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And the great advantage is that it's very parallel to what Lego does, or what Lego shows, is that you can do it step by step. If you use single bricks, then you can try if it fits or not, or if you have to use another color and another different colored brick or something like that. So I think today it's easier to make a decision than 10 years ago, where we only talked. For example, you had the chance to build a farm with Lego bricks, and maybe if you don't use Lego, you only could buy from a different company the whole farm, but you have no influence on that farm, so you have no chance to build your own cows or something like that, or the hair of the color of the hair of the farmer, so something like that. I'll give you some examples. So this is much easier today because you can test it with a relatively small budget, and I think this is also very important to build trustability when you use it in smaller bricks.
No, and it's a really good comparison too, especially to what you guys do. And it probably, if I were to guess, right, it probably helps ease the mind of the people you work with, being able to do it brick by brick, instead of saying, hey, you have to invest in this entire solution, or you have to invest in this massive product. You can say, you know, hey, let's start with these little bits, and then we will build this up, or we will, I think earlier you mentioned we can scale as you scale, but we need a good starting point to launch from, right? And be able to kind of get that off the ground.
The claim is no longer all or nothing.
I love
the claim
that.
is not all or nothing.
Yeah. Now, the one thing we haven't specifically pointed out, but anyone who's listening has probably figured out, is that you are based in Germany, right? You kind of are, you know, based over in Europe and everything like that. And I would imagine that, you know, wealth and the conversation behind that, financial management, is probably different in the regions that you're targeting, or the regions that you are trying to work with. How are you navigating through that?
That is a really interesting question, because, as you said, we were founded in Germany, and for a long time, Germany was our center market. So this means, but since I think in the 2015, we started with our first steps in Switzerland and so on. But maybe I'd like to explain how we did that change to get in further countries. So what we do is that we take a two-pronged approach in marketing and digital sales. On the one hand, we attack on a broad scale in the target countries we have previously defined. However, we do not do this completely aimlessly and arbitrarily. Since 2023, we have been using a clearly defined go-to-market process. This means this initially involves analyzing various factors of the target market and the target persons on a product-specific basis. In other words, let me say, we don't think from our perspective, from 𝐂𝐒's perspective, but from the potential customer's perspective. So in concrete terms, this means we're thinking about what are the drivers of the potential customers to invest in a new concrete product. What are their challenges? and also what are their options. And very important is also the last 2 points is what sets us apart from other providers, and what evidence can be used to prove this. So, and this is also a question of trustability. Then it's always easier to convince people. You can give them a proof point, and when they can see, okay, it works. So this is also very important. And when we have built this content, then we derive presentations, brochures, videos, and live presentations. They were all built on the same story, which we have worked out in this go-to-market process. This means there's a matrix we have to fill out, and from there we derive everything. And then we use an external digital sales agency to get the word out. So this means based on the developed messaging, the agency approaches the defined target group via various channels. And from a certain point of pre-qualification, it's the sales qualified lead, then we take over further contact with the customer. This methodology gives us a presence in the area of increases both awareness and the chance of serious interest. So with this approach, we have the chance to scale. Otherwise, I give you 2 reasons. It would not possible to go to further countries, no chance. And if you engage for each country a very good sales or country manager, believe me, this is very expensive. So this is the first approach, and what we also do, the second approach is this is the highly individualized one, but this also requires intensive research, because we identify what we consider to be the 20 to 5 most important people in the target group for each country. And we then go from marketing to intensive research to find quotes or statements on wealth management from these people. So then we make these available to our country managers so that we can address them in a highly personalized way. So this is not so much about the product specific approach, but rather a discussion of opinions and points of view. So you see, we have on the one hand, we have this scalable approach, and on the other side, we have this individual approach. So this is, and what I can tell you is that I was skeptical to use some external digital sales agency, but what we can say by now, it works. So we are the first factor is that we are more well known in the world, because every time they hear the word 𝐒𝐶𝐒, and it's a real good instrument to get the first steps in new markets.
I like the individual approach. I know that at least for campaigns that I've led or sales processes that I've been a part of, right, being able to, especially if you're trying to, I would imagine, cross countries, right, if you can get to that individual and speak to them on their level with their pain points that are happening with them specifically, right? That just helps. It's kind of like sales 101, right? That helps open the door and begin that conversation. And no matter where that conversation leads, I would imagine that just getting that door to open is the most important factor in anything, right? Because if you can't even get the door to open, you're not going to get anywhere. You have no research, you have nothing to fall back on. You've just got a closed door. But if you can kind of open it a little bit and start to have a conversation with the individual, you can at least learn about them on a little bit more of an individual basis. And I'm sure that helps translate for any sort of strategies you guys have, whether it's in country or out of country.
Absolutely. And what we recognize is that it's 100% sure in countries where we not were well known before. I think it's more difficult to do the first steps. This is absolutely clear. But I think the relation between the calls this digital agency does and the output is absolutely okay. You can't expect that you call 10 people and then you have 10 opportunities.
Right.
This is not the reality, and no one has to expect that, because it's unreal to do that in this relationship. So this means this, but it is, I think it's the only chance to increase awareness and also to get more sales success in a let me say it, in a good relation between cost and output. Yeah.
Yeah. That talks about 𝐔𝐘𝐒's plan and 𝐔𝐘𝐒's kind of structure on how you guys are doing things. But I'm curious about you, Christian, individually, right? I'm curious to see, what sort of resources you're using or what sort of practices are you keeping up with individually to make sure you're staying on top of your game for your role at 𝐔𝐘𝐒.
I would argue that even in these, as I said at the beginning, in these incredible fast-moving times, I think patience is still an important virtue. So
okay,
I think that because not an exaggerated extent, but in such a way that you can really evaluate measures in the long term. So when as I said beginning, when I looked at LinkedIn, for example, and I focused on the post as a first step, as I said, everyone there is the biggest and the best. Everything is exciting. And if at some point everyone is, then it's no longer a differentiating feature and lost its value. So however, if you use the valuable data from LinkedIn to address the right target persons, individually via other channels, then LinkedIn has an extremely important USP again, because that also Martal is working on together, uses LinkedIn to get in touch with the different target groups. So it is not for nothing that LinkedIn is also driving the connection to more and more CRM systems. So it has, they are also going on and on for LinkedIn. I think it would be too difficult for them if they only have the possibility to post something. So in short, you have to use certain mass media in order to be seen, absolutely clear, but you should also always find an individual and intelligent ways to get noticed in a highly competitive market. And please don't forget, for me it's always important, please don't forget the emotional component. After all, an emotion can attract decisive attention and at the first moment, but very important is, but then you have to become substantial, and hence the go-to-market approach just mentioned. This is very important. This is why we directly produce, based on this go-to-market process, a demo version and all the things that you directly can show substantial proof points. This is very important at the end. So this is my view on it, because everybody is on social media and so on, and so it's not so easy to differentiate. No,
I think it's a great piece of advice, especially as much as social media has kind of taken over, especially with like the newest generation, or even a couple older generations that maybe even I'm a part of, right? Everyone has some sort of social footprint, and I like the comparison you said, where if everyone's an expert, then no one's an expert, right? There's no differentiator across platform, because there's nothing to kind of make you stand out to everyone else. I think that's a really good point for anyone to take as a piece of advice, to try and figure out what their differentiating factor is for them individually and for the organizations that they potentially represent.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, I know we're kind of coming up on time here. I want to be respectful of that and make sure that we kind of keep things on time here. But I do, Christian, have one kind of like final question that I'd love to kind of get your take on, especially from somebody who's as seasoned as you are in not only your industry, but also your role within your organization, right? You've been, again, with 𝐔𝐘𝐒 for 20 years, which is really, really commendable. I'm curious, if somebody's coming to you and they are interested in, maybe either following a similar path that you've taken, or they want to, just like you did, they want to exercise the creative part of their brain. They want to exercise creativity and maybe get into marketing or get into sales. What pieces of advice would you give them in order to kind of help, kickstart their career or even continue driving their career forward?
I think it's a bit similar also to the thing I said at the beginning. So from my point of view, it's credibility, creativity, and delivery capability. I think credibility is essential to inspire and convince people. I've never liked it when people just trot out phrases, but nothing substantial happen afterwards. And most people realize that relatively quickly. And as a manager, you are quickly on thin ice and lose people if you are not when you are not trustable. And maybe in my private life, I was also active as a football coach for over 22 years. Maybe in US you say soccer, but here in Europe it's it's called football. And here it's the same too. It's absolutely okay if you give people ambitious goals. They usually accept that, but provided you remain credible and transparent along the way, this is very important, because regardless of whether it's positive or negative events, this mentality then permeates throughout the entire team, and you will inevitably realize that when new people join the team, they will have the same qualities and mindset, because otherwise they have no chance in this group, and that promises success in the end. And incidentally, the most successful coach in the European Champions League was Carlo Ancelotti, and he follows exactly this motto. He calls it quiet and trustable leadership. And I think one follow up from that is that, and if you are successful, it automatically means that you are also have delivered. And in my view, you need creativity for the following two things. And firstly, you need to stand out from the crowd in a few ways. Secondly, you need it to keep your enthusiasm for the job. And you had that also in the beginning. Always just mindlessly working through processes will eventually take the desire out of a real marketeer. And creativity has a clear advantage. It doesn't have to be expensive and can still attract a lot of attention. And you have to think about the right mixture between creativity and process-oriented marketing and sales. Yeah,
it's kind of I attribute that to using both sides of your brain, right? You know, you can be super creative and you can be, you know, analytical and a little bit more methodical,
structured.
But if you can blend those two together, I think there's a really sweet synergy there that can really help you out as an individual. And I would even venture to say that goes beyond sales and marketing. Like, it can be in almost any position that's out there that exists. If you can blend those two sides together, then that's just only going to benefit you down the road, right? So I think it's a great point to end on here and to wrap things up, Christian. So thank you, A, for that story, but then B, thank you for being a part of this podcast and being a guest on here. I had a great time listening to you, just kind of talk about your journey and everything therein. And I think there's some really good bits that the listeners, everyone out there can take from this and be able to kind of, sprout forward and everything like that. So Christian, again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Chris. The pleasure is on my side. Thank you very much.
Shout out once again to Christian for spending some time with us for this fireside chat. If you have a favorite part that you enjoyed, feel free to leave a comment down below and let us know on your thoughts on this chat with Christian. Be sure to like the video, consider hitting the subscribe button, and turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when future chats go live on our channel. Thanks for listening, and as always, happy hunting.